Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Alignment Keys. My name is Tina, and I help people get into alignment with their lives. One of the keys to alignment that I use in my practice is the soul contract. So I created this channel so that I can channel celebrities who crossed over to the other side and bring forward their energies and show you their contract and a lot of things that went on with them in their life. So the purpose of this channel is, of course, bringing forward celebrities because people know a lot about them. And so you can it gives you a better idea to see how their lives played out by the numbers in their chart. And it's not to put anybody on a pedestal or to judge anybody too harshly either, because we all have good or bad going on within us. None of these contracts are easy, and all of our journeys have struggles. We all have, things that we're working on. And this celebrity that I'm bringing forward is no different. He was a little bit more controversial for me because he does have quite this what I would consider some toxic masculinity during an era where, it was a lot of this patriotism and force and dominance and winning at all costs type of a mentality. And of course, we're going to see how that played out in his chart. But my aunt, who is no longer with us, but John Wayne was one of her all-time favorite actors, and she just loved him. And I did also. I remember watching, quite a few of his movies as well, usually with my dad. And my dad is also crossed over to the other side, but that was something we could bond with, watching Westerns and, those old time shows. And so he also was a big fan of John Wayne. But so let me tell you a little bit, as long as I like to jump right into it. And I do want to thank everybody for being here, thanking, all the subscribers and people who are checking it out. I'm very grateful. Any comments you want to leave, if there's anyone you would like to see, or, sometimes planting the seed. I did have somebody a while back plant a seed in that particular actor. Or it wasn't an actor, but a famous person came through, actor, kind of a, combination type personality. But John, like I said, John Wayne came through. He comes through this rugged, very powerful energy, but not much softer than I expected. And so, of course, once they cross over to the other side, obviously they see things from a much clearer trajectory. The veil's lifted, and they kind of go through your life review and see what was going on and where you were clouded and where you maybe have taken on, beliefs from other people, so that's all part of this journey here. So again, it's not to put people on pedestals or to judge them harshly. There's some things he wants me to bring through. So I don't want you to think I'm picking on him, but I have my own biases too. And so I work very hard on pushing those aside and just bringing forward the messages that they want to share with you. So we are going to do that in this channeling here with John Wayne. So I'll give you a little bit of the background on him. I'm going to read here from the Wikipedia site just to give you a little bit better background on him. So he was an American actor, was popular through his starring Western roles, but he started out in silent film in the 1920s. So he was a very pioneer in this whole genre, going from the silent era into movies. So he did 179 films and television productions. He was among the top box office draws for 3 decades. And he appeared with a lot of other stars, but the American Film Institute selected Wayne as one of the greatest male stars of the classic American cinema. And most people still will know, obviously, and will know who he is, even if, like I said, I could see a lot of his movies, but, he's just so well known, and he left such a legacy that, but he was born in Iowa, grew up in Southern California. And so I'm going to pull up his chart. So please let me share my screen as I always do. So hang tight. And here is John Wayne. And as you're going to first notice right away, he was not born John Wayne. And this is what we always talk about on this channel with me, is your soul contract is created from your birth name, and that is the name that is on your birth certificate. And he was given the name Marion Robert Morrison. And later on, I believe he had a brother that they named Robert, and their intent was to change his name to Marion Michael Morrison, but they never actually officially did that. So we're going to stay with the Marion Robert Morrison. This chart definitely is him, in my opinion, and from the channelings that I did get from him. And of course, I always talk about the fact that when you have a name, like he eventually changed his name to, or took the stage name John Wayne, that adds another level of, your birth name, as I always talk about, is your cake. This plays out throughout your whole life. And if we do a name change, or if there's ever you take a stage name or you use other names, those are kind of like the icing on the cake. So they will bring in some additional energies that can help you on your journey or help you to grow. And a lot of those are intuitively found. I do offer a name optimization for people who who are struggling to achieve their goals, and sometimes just tweaking your birth name can make a difference. So if you are new to the channel, I always put a short introductory video on the history of the soul contract, to how I put the charts together. Just if you would like to check that out, it's not very long. That way you can kind of tell how this all works, because I don't like to go into it every time, because my videos are long enough. Once I get into all of the details of the numbers, it usually takes me about an hour, half an hour to an hour. I just haven't been able to condense it down any more than that. So I'm going to keep with this pattern that I've started. So I always start out, we have two sides to our chart, our physical side and our spiritual side. Of course, I believe, spiritual beings having a physical experience here in the 3D world. So we always start out with the physical side, this triangle that points to the ground. And then you start to work into your spiritual numbers as you learn your lessons. They start to activate as well. And then we get those energies from those numbers as well. So if you see just what we call a double number, that's just one number you chose to experience in this aspect. And sometimes you will see two numbers. And so you picked a more blended energy. He has a lot of double numbers. So he picked some specific energies to work through in this lifetime. Give him kudos for that. He is a dominant 9 vibration. That is the strongest energy. We call it the dragon energy, which makes him a very powerful person. And of course, we know that about him. He exuded a power. People really looked up to him. He played very powerful roles, a lot of, authority positions with sheriff, vigilante. These are very powerful dragon energies that he was bringing into his roles. So that is not surprising to me with him having 9s. So I start out with our karma, because again, we all have several karmas that we're working through, a physical karma, and then us on our spiritual side. And this is not a punishment from anything we did wrong in our past lives or anything like that. This is what we choose as our opportunities for growth here. And there are things, experiences that we're going to manifest from these numbers that are going to accentuate our growth. And a lot of times we can perceive them as negative because they're not fuzzy things that happen. They can be, childhood traumas and abuse. We can manifest abuse to overcome it. And so we don't look at that as favorably. And John Wayne was no different. Everybody has their karma they're working on. And so he is definitely had some struggles. And then that kind of showed up. And we're going to talk about his beliefs because, again, I'm putting out what is True Grit. He played in that movie True Grit that won him an Oscar. It was one of the few movies that, he did get an Oscar for. And I'm going to talk about that because everything we do has symbolism associated with it. And it is all based on our growth here, what the universe is trying to show us and teach us, because we're in the Earth School, the 3D. Are you guys having fun yet with your lessons? Are you picking up on them? Because sometimes we don't. John, I am going to refer to him as John Wayne, because that is what everybody knows him by. So the first thing that kind of came through for me is he has this sevens in his physical karma. And I always say, our physical chart starts to take off. So we have karmas and then our talents, which is helps us, assists us in our growth to meeting our physical goals. Because we all have some goals, spiritual and physical, that kind of get us out of bed in the morning. And then, of course, our soul destiny is that overall picture of what John Wayne or Marion Robert Morrison came here to accomplish. So I always like to start with the karma because that is really what hits us in the butt and definitely gets us moving. And so when you have sevens, I talk about this, a lot of actors have sevens. I don't know too many that don't have sevens. I think Robin Williams maybe was one of the few, but it's not the only, obviously, number that you can be an actor in. It was just, I see it because it makes you very magnetic. It's also about the hidden self. So people with sevens like to play parts of other personas. And so that's why we got John Wayne. Everyone called him Duke because, and this sevens is all about heart healing. So it's about healing the heart here and opening the heart to others. Something he struggled with here, opening opening up to other people and seeing things from other perspectives, because we do in our egoic way get attached to the beliefs that we take on from others. And then we want to hang on to those beliefs and not change. And so sevens can be very controlling. Like I said, they can hide their true self through these personas that they play. He didn't like the name Marion because he was, this was what I got through, came through from him in the channeling, was that he was bullied a lot with that name because it's kind of like Marion. It's kind of like a female name. And I think Betty White's middle name is Marion as well. And so he did not, that didn't resonate very well with him because he was this, even growing up, from his parents, he was really wanted to play the masculine. That was very, it was very much in that culture of that time. And he wanted to be the tough guy. He didn't want, he played sports. He didn't, he wanted to be competitive. He did not want to, again, be considered feminine. And he has very masculine energies. These are powerful energies. I'll talk a little bit when we get to the spiritual side about the eights, which is a very masculine energy. So he never really resonated with that name and didn't really care for it. So I just wanted to bring that. He just wanted to share that. So he had, the name changes suited him, John Wayne being very, just this meat and potatoes name, that is, out of the US, being kind of religious, but strong, Christian name, that people could really resonate with. So that's kind of why he liked that name. So so with the sevens, also for him, this would give him issues around making decisions, because seven is not just about opening the heart. It's about, as far as the acting side, it's about bringing, being able to fool people, right? Being this great actor and fooling people with your real feelings. So it gives you this great objectivity, but when it's in its karmic, it can make you very much feel indecisive. Like it doesn't give you this, so it's going to cloud your judgment a little bit in some aspects, because you don't trust yourself. There's this deep-seated feeling when you have sevens in karma that there's something bad about you, and that so people don't like to show their true selves. They need to have a really super safe environment to be able to speak as to who they really are. And this is where we got, and we see in a lot of interviews, this very mishmash of kind of some racist views, but then he would flip and talk, be very inclusive. And it was really a little bit odd, but that is not odd when you're dealing with a karmic seven. That actually, they can kind of, and this plays out with some other numbers in his chart as well. The especially the eights, because they can kind of change themselves to fit the person at hand. And so if the person at hand is being very, racist, they'll kind of act that way to get their kind of approval. But yet, if he was dealing with somebody who was a lot more open and conscious, his more conscious side would come out. So we see that sometimes with eights, where they kind of flip up and down on the scale. And so that was no different with him. That's why I said, just be very careful about the harsh judgments. But he did do some things that were very not so good. When we are going to bring those up, he does want me to not hold back about those things. So again, we talked about that he modeled himself after other people, including, I don't know if a lot of people know this, Wyatt Earp, was alive back then. And if people know who Wyatt Earp was, he was kind of like helped settle the Wild West. And he was known for this big shootout with the bad guys, because there was all this divisiveness and stuff with the gaining control over, the law, or were we going to be civilized, or were we going to be only the strong survive, and who's going to protect so we were kind of going through that phase. And Wyatt Earp was still alive, and he modeled his Western career after him, and his walk and how he presented himself, because John Wayne knew him personally. So I thought that was interesting. And so a lot of what, again, this indecisiveness came into play too, with a lot of roles. So he turned down a lot of really good roles because of his indecisiveness, a little bit of his eights. Again, this comes from a spiritual side, but I'm going to bring it in because eights can really hold a grudge. They struggle a little bit with letting go of the past, and this can also come from this 11 too as well. And so if he would take some very strong beliefs, and sometimes, the old adage, as my dad would say, be careful about cutting off your nose to spite your face, because he turned down some really good roles kind of over some petty issues. He turned down Matt Dillon, which was the big role for James Arnaz in Gunsmoke. He turned down a part in The Dirty Dozen and Dr. Strangelove and Blazing Saddles as well. And some of that was, he was telling me, was, again, this indecisive, letting other things override what was really best for him as an actor. And so, again, that's that clarity, learning to let go sometimes, and some things, again, can be not doing something because it doesn't feel right to you. And that's okay too. But he did want me to mention that. So he did, so with, that indecisiveness. He was lucky enough to get these wonderful sixes and talents. And I've talked about this before. Sixes are this wonderful creative energy. It gives you this great ability to focus and to be able to build, be good in business and but be creative as well. And so it gives you this great, gives you great ideas, and it gives you this great intelligence to be able to channel good information and and do it in your own way through your own creativity. So we call it the convertible knot. That's the symbol here. Like the sevens are all about uniting people together, and that's part of overcoming. We always want to overcome our karma in our lives, and this would be him unifying people for common causes, and we'll talk about that. And because when we get together for each other, it makes it stronger. The energy becomes stronger, and that can be a very unifying and very great energy to be projecting. It can also be negative because if it's done in the wrong context, whether that would be promoting racism or promoting things, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, about other people, then that would be a unifying with people to bring other people down. And that did happen. He was part of that in some politics. We'll get into that. But then on the negative, so every number, I always say, doesn't matter what position it's in, it can bring in energies that we would consider positive, like the focus of the sixes, the creativity of the sixes, but it can also bring in negatives. And addictions is a huge one for John Wayne, with smoking and drinking. Stubbornness is another one. So the addictions cost him a lung, and it also brought in some anger management, which does also play off of this 11-2 in his spiritual goals, which is this 2 is very hypersensitive emotionally, and it can really throw you out of balance with your moods, up and downs with moods. And so then the sixes can bring in a lot of anger and frustration because you get a lot of blockages. And when you're drinking, again, I'm not totally against drinking or having a glass of wine, but if you're drinking to excess, you're opening yourself up to blockages of creativity because of the effects that alcohol has on us. And it creates distortions in our fields, and he was known as a very mean drunk. And so this is part of that, that can happen with people with sixes who, drink a lot. And he did end up getting lung cancer as well. He had a lung removed and a couple of ribs. That cost him. The positive side, though, but he's super powerful with these nines because he overcame that. And a lot of people would not have been able to overcome that, lung cancer, that's very unusual in those days because the treatments we all have control over our body and how, I believe, and how we can, mind over matter type things, but it does depend on how deep our beliefs are. And at that time, the C word was a bad, that would take people down because the belief and the collective was that it was a death sentence. And then if you take on that belief, that's where, again, that we end up in a little bit of trouble. So very strong with those nines, being a dominant 9, he worked through that. And the thing that he said actually made him a better actor, because when he would say his lines later on, he would have to pause. And those pauses helped to reinforce the way he spoke and when he needed to accentuate things. And so it actually improved some of his acting capabilities. So I thought that was very fascinating as well, that there was this very positive outcome for it. So what were his nines about in physical goals? So what this is for him is because nines are all about power, but using your power with integrity. And so it's really about him finding his true power and then using it properly. And so he would be given a lot of, with this karmic 7, he would be given a lot of opportunities to open his heart to others and let people in. And so, finding boundaries. So one of the issues, and when I talk about finding your power with integrity, well, he was known for a lot of high profile affairs. That is not finding your power with integrity. When you're married, being deceitful in any way is not of the highest integrity. So, and he did develop what I would consider more of he was very patriotic, but you have to be, 9s are known for pride, but there's a really fine line to where pride can be this nationalism that is very low consciousness, or patriotism, which done in the right way can be of a higher level of consciousness. So he did develop towards later, not always, because we're going to talk a little bit about that, but he did, so when JFK was elected, and John Wayne was a very much conservative, a Republican, considered himself a white nationalist, because he actually said that in an interview that I saw with him, because not necessarily, and I don't want to get into all of his beliefs, because again, these were beliefs he took on from other people that I don't think were serving him very well. But as he got older, after when JFK was elected, he did say, even though I didn't vote for him, he is my president, and I hope he does a good job. So this is where true patriotism comes in, where we can see the bigger picture and know, even if somebody gets elected that we don't agree with, we just have to lend our support as best we can, but, and not condemn them or like we see with a lot of the nationalism over the last few years. And the issue with nationalism approach is that it's my way or the highway. It's America first, regardless of what that does to other countries. So it's this more of this self-serving component to it. It's very dangerous. People fall into the trap of it because they, of course I want to support our country, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of people in other countries, because again, it's about all of us and doing the good for the greater whole, not just one person or one country. It's okay though to still have patriotism and be proud of the things in your country that are great. And again, there's this balance. And I did want to read, I brought up this book before, Power versus Force. I think everybody should read it. And it's all about levels of consciousness. It's written by David Hawkins. I highly recommend it. And so on his consciousness scale, which I talk about, because all of these emotions like fear and shame and guilt are very low on the bottom of the consciousness scale. And what we're trying to do is to rise above those lower emotions and become higher in consciousness. So in our ascensions process. So I wanted to read about the issue with pride. So 9s carry the negative. They can generate a lot of this pride. And so pride is divisive, and it gives rise, and I'm reading David's words here, to factionalism. If the pride is divisive and it gives rise to this factionalism, the consequences are costly. Man has habitually died for pride. Armies still regularly slaughter each other for that aspect of pride called nationalism. Religious wars, political terrorism, and zealotry, the ghastly history of the Middle East and Central Europe are all the price of pride, which all of society pays. So the downside of pride is therefore arrogance and denial. These characteristics block growth in pride, recovery from addictions is impossible because emotional problems or character defects are denied. The whole problem of denial is one of pride. Thus, pride is a very sizable block to the real acquisition of power, which displaces pride with the true stature and prestige. So, he's got 9s here in karma, and this is what gives rise to that, him flip-flopping with trying to open his heart here on the pride and nationalism piece. So, because he also was in favor of voting for blacklisting others during the McCarthy eras in the 50s. They were on this communism where they were just picking up people they didn't like, and they were like, well, you're a communist and you're a communist and then they would blacklist these people and they wouldn't get work and they would have to leave the country because some were arrested. It was a mess. And so he helped to run out Carl Foreman, who was a screenwriter who actually wrote the movies High Noon and The Bridge on the River Kwai. And it was because John Wayne didn't like him. So this is where we get into trouble. And he wanted me to bring this up, so I'm not picking on him, with that aspect of pride when we have it in karma. It's something that has to be dealt with if we're really going to overcome our blocks and move on to our, help to expand our growth. And like I said, it's not that he was prideful all the time. These are things that fluctuate, because he had this great spiritual talent here, which is a very great grounding energy. It's very paternal and protective. It gives him this great ability, as I said before, he can relate to people. He's a chameleon. He can change himself to relate. And so this helped him, like I said, really work through these paternal protective roles. And so many people said that John Wayne didn't really have great acting skills. He was just being who he was. And I believe that when I look at this chart, this strong 9s, my son-in-law has a lot of 9s in his chart, and he's a canine officer. They're very much this very powerful. They usually take a power expressive position if you have a lot of 9s in your chart. So and I love him. He's great. My son-in-law, he's a canine officer, so he does a fabulous job. And so 9s in this karma comes with a lot of resistance, though. And this, again, we saw, the resistance is built there to make you stop and try to figure out why you're feeling such resistance. And so it's about, again, allowing the breath of God to flow through you. Not, how when we get stressed, sometimes we stop breathing, that's that resistance. And so so he actually wanted to, so 9s can bring in a lot of very disempowering energy when you have it in karma as well, things that disempower you. And so he wanted to enlist for the war effort in World War I, and the people surrounding him kept him out of the war. And he felt very guilty about that he didn't enlist and do his rightful duty, because that 8s are all about being protective energy, and they want to serve others, society in some way. And so that was a lot of guilt, for him that he carried with him a long time, which is really hard on the body when you're carrying around a lot of these negative energies. And when you have 9s, I always tell people they can be hard on the body because they subconsciously know that they are kind of a piece of God, that we can't really die, right? Just our bodies can die. And so 9s, I always talk about how 9s know at its subconscious deep level that they will never die. But so then they're hard on the physical body because they have that kind of this unconscious knowing. So, but the physical body needs to be taken care of. So, but 8s in the negative side also can be a little hard on the body. That's where some of his commitment issues would also come through, because they have a harder time fitting into society. And when you have it in talents, it's meant for you to fit into society. But in the negative part of it. Sometimes they can struggle a little bit with commitment and kind of knowing that, in a negative, like if this was in karma, they can be lawbreakers, where with him having it in talents, he wanted to be the sheriff, the authority, right? For the most part. So again, that's what made him so good in a lot of those parts that he was playing. So so when we talk about that resistance and a lot of struggles with this 9, and it's also this destruction of people. So you can either manifest things that are very destructive to yourself, which he was kind of doing again through the addictions, through the drinking and the smoking, or you can destroy other people like he was trying to do in some other ways, because they usually have some trauma that they're dealing with from their past, but they tried to recreate it through others, so that, well, it was done to me, so this is kind of how it should manifest for others. And so they play this kind of very negative part. So the one thing I did want to talk about was that, because he wanted to serve and he couldn't, he did end up in the Second World War, he did end up joining the OSS, which was kind of like the CIA. So he did do some service, and he also did tour with the USO, which was very much a good, positive thing. And so, so he did kind of overcome some of that by making sure that he did do some service there. And so this 11-2 in his spiritual goals, because Acer gave him this great grounding energy to bring forward his, the characters that he was playing through that creativity. And so, but in a spiritual, it really was about him to build some type of structure in his life. And so, learning to let go of what no longer serves you, the 8s, letting go of toxic relationships, and to build this business and some type of a body of work, which he did through his Westerns and through kind of this tough guy persona. So 11-2s, because they lack structure, they can have trouble in school, and he did have some trouble in school. And it's also about learning the emotional resiliency that I talked about, his, being able to, not overreact. Yeah. So the objectivity, the 7s being in karma and the 5s, I haven't gotten to those yet, can make him very impulsive, impatient, and actually kind of reckless at times. I bet he was a tyrant at times. He could be. So that's kind of the sense I was getting with him. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about True Grit, right? Because we were talking about, him getting that Oscar for that portrayal of Rooster Cogburn. I thought, well, that's kind of a symbolic name, right? Rooster being this, how roosters are kind of strutting around in this cocksure attitude. Yeah, I can kind of see that toxic masculinity, and so he played this aggressive, one-eyed, which I found very interesting, because 11-2 is tied to the eyes. And so the left eye, which is what he wore the eye patch over, is one who refuses to look at the world as it is. It's an overly sensitive soul. So people didn't know this about him because he closed his heart down. 8s make him a high frequency soul, which makes him very sensitive, and the 2s make him hypersensitive emotionally. So this is an overly sensitive soul who wants to stay in his own lane. He doesn't want to be found out. So he was this big drinker at the beginning of the movie. He was to clean himself up and work with a woman who was actually Katharine Hepburn, and who was his age, which was very unusual to have that dynamic in that era, because they always had these younger, beautiful women. So it was this spinster, because she wasn't married, older woman who was kind of his equal, and then this scout who was this Native American Indian guide. And so what's the symbolism around this was really about him opening up to that teamwork, not being that I'm the one saving the day, you know, the toxicity of that. And so he was enlisted in this movie to go get the bad guys who stole the nitroglycerin. And the symbolism for the nitroglycerin here is leveling up the explosive emotions of the two. So it's about him reining in the nitroglycerin, working with others and bringing in your emotions and then learning to do the right thing by everybody. And so that was a symbolism that I got out of that movie that he wanted me to bring through that. Like I said, everything we do is symbolism and is sending us messages. So here he's playing this part that is trying to get him to open his heart and, you know, cooperate and to, I think he ended up being saved actually by the woman, which would normally he wouldn't have wanted something like that because it would make him seem weak. So this is an little bit of an evolution, and he did end up winning an Oscar for that. So I thought that was really fascinating. However, there was one negative thing that I did want to bring up about him, where we talked about that explosive emotion and holding on to these rigid beliefs and not letting others speak their truth, because fives are all about him speaking his truth and that, you know, his beliefs, but this is allowing other people to speak theirs. And so he had to be restrained at the Academy Awards when Marlon Brando refused to come to accept his award. He sent the Native American actress Little Feather to collect his award and give a very passionate speech about the treatment of Native Americans in the entertainment industry. This, of course, riled up John because he could not yet see from the higher perspective, which is what the twos on the spring are trying to get you. 11 twos are about, it's foolishness to wisdom, trying to get you to gain wisdom through these foolish things we do. So he could not yet see from a higher perspective his role in the perpetuating this form of racism, because he was in all these movies that were perpetuating these limiting beliefs of Native Americans. So that the twos are the foolishness to wisdom, having knee-jerk reactions to situations and developing the resiliency to sense what you are feeling, but then not acting, trying to figure out what's triggering you and going deeper, right? So she did receive, Little Feather did receive an apology for her treatment at that time because she was treated very poorly. 50 years later by the Academy, it wasn't that long ago that she received that apology, and I'm really happy. I was very happy to have read that she did get that. And I thought that was interesting that it was 50 years ago, which is the fives, and why he wanted me to bring that up to you guys. So the whole purpose of his interaction here was building this body of knowledge, coming into his emotions healthily, serving society in a good way, uniting people, again, in a positive aspect. So, you know, the fives were all about him speaking his truth. So some of the positive things that he ended up accomplishing was when he was diagnosed with lung cancer, his team did not want him to go public, but he did so anyways, bringing awareness to illness and, of course, uniting others in that common cause. He also had a cancer foundation. He enrolled himself in a vaccine study, which is very brave. And again, that's the nines coming into their positive forms. He did end up dying of stomach cancer. So, as I always preach, my messages from the body, okay, from Michael Lincoln. And so not every physical manifestation has an emotional component. However, I will read them on this channel if the person that I am channeling encourages me to do so. And I did get the okay. And then they choose, there's different manifestations for things. So, and then he helped me to choose the one that was most applicable to his situation. So we're going to, so he survived this lung cancer, and then he ends up getting stomach cancer. So what it says in the manual is eating themselves away. They have intense power issues, which comes from the 9s, and anger, which comes from the 6s, that generate resentment, dislike, and bitterness that block the digesting and assimilating of experiences, as well as disrupting the ability to accept that which the experiences teach. So he was struggling learning some lessons. He was internalizing that. And it was creating a lot of negative. So they are consumed with anger, and they are highly condemning of other people's success. They're rejecting over discriminating, dichotomizing, and restricting their own consciousness. There is a much conflict between their head and their heart, between their thought and their feeling functions. They are heavily into denial, repression, rationalization, and overly mental evaluation. They're displaying inflexible attitudes and systematic assimilation avoidance. So that is what he wanted me to share with you. But like I said, once they cross over to the other side, they get a whole new perspective. And so I asked him what he thought of what was going on right now. And what I was getting from him is, yeah, there's a lot of divisiveness, a lot of polarization, a lot of this prideful nationalism. Once I vote for somebody, I will go down the drain with them, even though truths are coming out, or we're really getting to see the whole story, and using that power in an incorrect way. And he goes, but everyone has their journey, and the more we can trust, the more we can send love. Again, I talk about that all the time, the more we can change that. But if we're giving into fear and saying people were never going to change, and you know what, there was a time when I wasn't as, not that I'm putting myself on any pedestal, but that I was not supporting people like I should have. And I wasn't in my unity consciousness as much as I try to be now, and becoming more aware of how what I do affects others. So again, it's all our journeys, and we're seeing a lot of this shadow energy playing out. And he's just saying, really, true grit is just us seeing it for what it is, but still loving anyways, loving, having fun, not letting go of those old emotions that, the 8s, again, like to hold on to, and 11-2s as well, are all about cycles and letting things go and moving on. It doesn't, and forgiving, and forgiveness is not saying that if somebody did you an injustice, that was okay. Forgiving is what is letting it go, so you're not poisoning yourself because you're internalizing it, you're holding grudges. It's again, it's wasted energy, and it's again letting that mind take control, because these thought patterns, somebody, we over-identify with these thought patterns, and again, what you believe will show itself to you. So if you think the world is a horrible place, if you think, this, these people are foolish, that type of person's probably going to show itself to you in that way. So you have to be very careful about what you're trying to hang on to, these beliefs. And so the true test for him was to learn with 5s that there are many levels of truth as well. So we have to be very careful about pushing our truths onto others, because everybody has, their own level of truth. And so it's not black and white. And if you're hanging on to the black and white thinking, you'll tend to get more into trouble with that than if you can really listen. And people aren't, we're so much more alike than we are different. And he says, and just learning that true protective, paternal energy, that true divine masculine, that can be a very non-violent caring, showing power, but not using force. And if you read the book Power versus Force, he does such a great job in explaining the differences between those. So we're going to pick some cards though, because he does have other messages. And he's pointing me right through to the elemental deck, because 8s in your chart are tied to the elementals. They tied to the animals. And he had a great love, I'm sure, of animals. I do have the animal cards as well. So John Wayne. Oh, so 2 cards flipped up. So let's see what we've got here. So we have number 8 came out, fire. Not surprised that fire came out right away. And then 3, which is beginnings, and that east. So 11 2s are tied to that direction of east. And it's about letting go of the old so that the sun rises in the east, and that can let in new opportunities and new ideas, new projects, letting go of those cycles of, like his movies, he had to let go of one persona before he could take on another. And, you know, the 8s is about, it's okay to feel. I'm going to stop sharing just so I can show you these cards as we go through them. See that beautiful fire energy. And so you can see kind of the soul contract stars there. And so the 8s, the fire, it's okay to feel those energies, and fire can be very passionate and persistent, and those are positive energies. It's not always have to be used in a negative way. And so we have this, I find very interesting, this Native American looking woman on ignition, fire, igniting the passion in others. Beautiful. And so on this one, the east, the beginnings, we have, this is kind of that, you know, the 11 2, that moon energy, even though this is a 3, 3s are a master teacher number. And so this also has like the magic behind the, he wants me to read the 3 one. So let's do that, the east. So beginnings. Worry not, a new dawn is breaking. Like I said, with the 11 2, that was about the dawn. Let go of the old and embrace the new. Flow forward without heaviness or anxiety. New ways of being are calling to you. Speak up with a clear voice. Do not resist change. So in the ancient world, to go east meant to go somewhere new and exotic. The sun rose in the east, so the direction heralded new beginnings and fresh starts. As the east was associated with the air element, it has come to mean a much more cerebral destination or way of processing. The east was a place to find your fortune, a different way to be, and innovation. Eastern religions, Buddhism, Zen, Hinduism, for example, were a completely different paradigm from those of the West, with different emphasis and processes. East is one of the quarters called in certain traditions of witchcraft to purify or protect a space. People may call upon the guardians of the East or the Eastern directions as a way of unlocking the protective energies of portals of that element. So you can call in the protectors of the East. And so he wanted to say that because, again, I didn't mention he had 5s in his chart, and they can be very much susceptible to psychic attacks and energies, picking up on negative energies from other, and they can get very negative in their expression because of that. So he did want me to point that out as well. So we're going to the animals now. Okay, John, give it to us straight. Oh, I'm not surprised that came out. Lion spirit, 37, 3 and 7. So we get another 3. That's the second 3. And then we had the 7 in his chart, the heart healing, but the lion spirit, so be generous of heart. You can kind of see that lion spirit, that powerful, but being generous. So the positive aspect of the 9s are warmth and being generous, and that is something definitely he exhibited from time to time. Like I said, nobody is all good or all bad. So, and this is tied to the ego. And so a healthy ego means you ease God's order instead of edging God out. So lion spirit appearance is a reminder that you have been given the gift of pride, because we talked about 9s with the pride, and a healthy sense of your worth to express your divine authentic self in a unique way. You are both the king and the queen, secure in your prosperity and wisdom and generous of spirit as you help others. Take pride in your ability to serve from the heart. Contentment with what you have right now allows you to use your resources wisely as you give to others in ways that educate, heal, inspire, and delight. So this comes back to contentment. Gratitude is the big one. Be proud yet humble. Practice gratitude, and you will find that the accolades that come to you are no match for the joy of knowing what you have been able to do for others through expressing the bounty of generosity within you. Lion spirit knows there's a great savannah before you and many who will benefit from the healthy expression of your unique set of gifts if you choose to work in partnership with spirit. All your relationships flourish as you express your worth and generosity of spirit with humility and kindness. What a blessing you can be to all. This is what true grit. So he's saying what we're unraveling here is what true grit is all about. And so I have wisdom of the oracle next. That's so fun. Okay. This is the third 3, 3, 3, 3. That adds up to 9. Between worlds. Here we got that, remember that black and white thing? Kind of seeing things in black and white and then kind of this color. So yeah, he's like, you may be evolving and being between worlds right now. And the flamingo, the pink flamingo, right, is that symbol of love. And there's a crown on the head too, of like this kind of a regalness. And then we see the water, the emotions here, getting that, stepping into the emotions, and then walking out from that black and white thinking into more color, vibrancy. And he says, it's okay if you're feeling stagnant and a little bit between worlds right now. The energy will build again and it will push you to the other side. Love that. Thank you for bringing that through. And I do have the archetype cards, which I wanted to, So the one that comes out for John Wayne, or one that he wants to share with you, is the father archetype. Did he not have that paternal protective father archetype card? So the light, there's always a shadow side and a light side. So the light side of the father is the talent for creating and supporting life, positive, guiding light within a tribal unit. So they're supportive, guiding others, and creating and supporting life. So the shadow attributes of that are dictatorial control, abuse of authority. So that's the shadow side of the father archetype. So he was definitely a father archetype. I'm not surprised at that. I don't think any of us are. And so then I was surprised he picked this deck. So, which is kind of my, I don't even, shapeshifters, which I find, I guess he was kind of a little bit of a shapeshifter in that 8 energy with the chameleon, but it's mermaid in a koi pond, and it says rediscover your individuality, become the dragon. And remember, nines are the dragon energy. This card is 41, which adds up to the 5, which is his soul destiny was 5. And 5s are also pioneer energies. Now he was offered to go into more like he did movies, and they wanted him to start doing more television. He wouldn't do it. Those 7s and the 11-2s can kind of block your judgment a little bit, because he was meant to be that pioneer that went from silent films to television, or to movies to television, but he wouldn't do it. He would not let go of, there was a little bit of a stigma around there that he wouldn't let go of it. But anyways, the mermaid in a koi pond. So koi, you know, about abundance, and being, you know, that's what they represent. And I love that. Rediscover your individuality. He's encouraging. Really great cards. And like I said, we do have the 3 3s here. And then we had the 7 and the 8 and the 5, the 4 and the 1, which made 5. But from his soul chart. So I'm going to end, we're going to pick one healing mantra card as well. So we like to do that and leave you guys with something to help with the healing process. So a lot of great messages for you guys out there that he's sending, you know, to you. So just remember, they gain so much clarity on the other side. And so that's why they want to come through. So it doesn't matter how good they were in this life, or, you know, if they struggled and they you know, they get to the other side and they're like, oh, but it still was great learning. And he's going to take that to his next life, all of this wonderful learning. And so that's going to be, so of course this would come up in this time. So this is what he wants to leave us with. And this is all about honoring adversity. So I want to read from the book here. Honoring adversity. When adversity is honored, life is appreciated as oscillating cycles of deterioration and renewal. Deterioration is a natural process of new things becoming old, while renewal is a process of old things becoming new. As you learn to honor these two interconnected processes, just as naturally as the changing of seasons, you are able to embrace adversity. It is not a punishment, but a gift of renewed birth out of the ashes of erosion. Wow. This mantra is ideal for processing unforeseen changes, overcoming superstitious beliefs, and surrendering the ego. So the mantra is, and we're going to say this 3 times, everyone. A fire reveals a path of renewed direction once the burning is complete. A fire reveals a path of renewed direction once the burning is complete. A fire reveals a path of renewed direction once the burning is complete. Hopefully you can see that. I will put that in the description box below. What a wonderful mantra for all of us to start accepting and understanding what all this adversity is all about. I think that is just this great message he wanted to leave with us. I am going to leave the final thing I'm going to leave you with is a quote that a close friend wrote about John Wayne. And this is what he said. Duke, because John Wayne was called Duke. Duke's personality and sense of humor were very close to what the general public saw on the big screen. It is perhaps best shown in these words he had engraved on a plaque. Each of us is a mixture of some good and some not so good qualities. In considering one's fellow man, it's important to remember the good things. We should refrain from making judgments just because a fellow happens to be a dirty, rotten SOB. I love that. So he wanted to leave you with that thought as well. So Thank you so much for being here. Please subscribe is free. Like, share, any comments. I'm always grateful to answer any comments that you guys have or questions that you have. So thank you for being here. And may you always find the alignment in your life. So take care. Sending you much love. Bye for now.